Flight is a subject that has inspired generations for millennia, I guess. But what if you could tackle that challenge in an entirely different way, and particularly human flight? What if you tackled that challenge by leaning very heavily on the capabilities that we kind of all come out of the box with? So I'm talking about balance, control, strength. Because after all, the human being is a pretty amazing machine, and to really reinforce that point, I'll show you a little clip here, but also I think an even better example than my old training partner doing that, I would say, is actually a cross-country run. So running across a field, I mean, that's an amazing feat of balance and control. Your feet are only momentarily touching the ground with each stride. That's phenomenal. If you were to build a robot to do that, then, you know, the Boston Dynamics people can explain to you how hard that is. So what about approaching this challenge of human flight, leaning very heavily on that already pretty amazing machine? And that's the story I'm going to share with you. So there's one thing that's missing, and that's horsepower. So we don't really come out of the box, despite with balance and a decent amount of strength, we don't have enough power versus our weight. So we had a little play around with one of these. So this was around March 2016, I would say. And the ethos that we applied here, and this is all alongside day jobs and doing other busy things, was spending more time getting out there and testing and learning from failure, getting your hands dirty, and as long as it was safe, learning from doing. And so that was the Mark I arm mount to put a microgas turbine on your arm. Then that worked so well that we decided to go and actually test it in the field. This is in a lane with a mop bucket with the fuel tank inside it. That was so compelling, that generated so much power. You can see towards the end of this, I was really having to brace myself to try and hold it, that we thought, well, there's an obvious place to go after knocking up that very simple, basic prototype. Let's try two. So this was now a bigger field. Fuel tank now in a backpack, and an engine on each arm. So this is now generating around 350 horsepower, 300 horsepower, and pushing with about 44 kilos of thrust. So I'm essentially weighing 44 kilos less than I did, but obviously I'm carrying equipment. And you can see when I try and hold them horizontally and somewhat fail, you can see there's quite a lot of power there. So again, following this trend you might be noticing now, we tried 4. Now it's getting really serious. For a moment, I mean, the maths doesn't quite add up, but I mean, that's 88 kilos of lift. When you put the fuel and the other equipment on, then that's not quite enough to get me off the ground. Me without carrying the equipment, that would be. But you can see that was compelling. And this was only probably, and I don't have a precise date stamp on that clip, that was probably only 2 months, 3 months after that first standing in a lane with an engine. So you can see, wherever possible, quickly prototype and repurpose existing equipment and go test and learn vastly quicker than going and custom building at great expense something that as soon as it arrives out the box you think, oh, that wasn't going to work. So you can see this was a little bit of a failure. You've got a little collection of failures coming here. We got the engines now on the legs. This was a model that didn't really work very well. This was the idea of trying to safely suspend myself from this harness. It didn't work at all because you've effectively generated another vector, another component of lift that is variable because you're swaying around underneath this thing. It's hard enough to work out what to do with all these limbs pushing. So that didn't work. This didn't work either. This was an example of pinching a fuel line. That's going quite well until this happened. That was annoying. And this was a blind alley. When I said about quickly repurposing and experimenting and not being afraid to try stuff, that's now an awful lot of horsepower. And this is all on the arm. So each arm there is pushing with about 60 kilos of lift. If I put them on full power, and you can see I was chickening out of putting the outer ones on full power because you can see the exhaust cones weren't glowing as red. That would have lifted me up a long way. I've also got the batteries on my shoulders there because we were having a bit of an issue with the lipos getting a little warm, sort of below knee height. So we stuck them up there temporarily. Anyway, we made lots of progress, and this is a little collection of very short little clips where you can see we were kind of getting there tantalizingly close. There's no rule book for this. Look at that. That's just, we were so close. And then this strange human behavior of when you feel like you're going to fall over, your legs start doing this, which is no good when you've got an engine attached to each one. But the model of 2 on each arm and 1 on each leg. That was enough on paper to lift the body. And in theory, I thought with that starting hypothesis of balance and control, that should be enough to be able to get you off the ground. And then we did this. This was November 2016. With a very wobbly right leg. That was it. You actually managed to fly in a kind of beaten up farmyard, not very far away from where I live. That farmyard was critical to this process because you could actually go and prototype something and within 5 minutes drive down the road and go and test it there, nowhere near any roads or footpaths or press or anything like that, because right up until that moment, this looked like a ridiculous pastime. But at the point we did that, that's where it changed from a crazy vision, a crazy dream, a crazy idea into something that actually worked. But failing was never far away. This is a little collection, just everybody loves the falling over. That was a recent one. You know, as long as it's safe, and there was a big life jacket that then popped out, I didn't drown there. As long as the failures were safe and controlled, that's how we made the progress. We learned vastly more about these failures than we ever did when it actually worked. Now, this is a little collection of clips from the Guinness World Record we did. The Guinness folks hounded us for a while about doing a flight, so they set it all up. And this is, I guess, a nice little showcase of the capability we've got now. So this was back in November, and we've actually enhanced the system quite a long way since this. But as I think you'll agree, I think we've validated the hypothesis that the brain and body is a pretty awesome machine at being able to balance and control. And I don't ski, I don't snowboard, I don't roller skate, I've got no clever balancing ability. I mean, I can stand on one leg, but that's it. But look at that balance and control. That's all down to what you can do with your arms in terms of adjusting the vectors. So that, you know, as I say, that's just, I think, a culmination of really only about 18 months, 12 to 18 months of sort of relentless development, and that was the back end of last year. So where have we gone since then? It's actually been a pretty amazing journey. We launched this whole business after we patented all the technology as well. We launched it around the end of March last year. We've now done 38 events in 13 countries. We had a funding round that was somewhat accidental by doing a demonstration in San Francisco. And the Draper family wrote a check after the demo on a banknote, and that was my funding round. My background, by the way, I was an oil trader for 16 years in a big corporate, big oil company, and I also set up a startup some years ago, and I'm absolutely familiar with most startups having a much harder job, a much harder pathway to funding. This doesn't seem to follow any of those rules. So, and this photo here is a demonstration of one of the things that have come since. We've had lots of people around the world seemingly quite inspired by what we've done and asking if they too can learn how to fly. And I have to say, to begin with, we were so busy, we just said, look, wait until we've developed the next version of this. But a small select few, actually, we conceded to, and that was the first example of a custom-built race suit or flight suit that we built for a particular individual. And I've got a little clip here of, that was me flying in after spending 3 days with him, our anonymous Japanese, very wealthy individual who actually learned to fly that. Still in the same farmyard. We're now operating in a much nicer kind of custom-built hangar, I have to say. But I quite like that photo because there's actually 2 people wearing all this crazy kit, and it all flies. The suit I was wearing there is around 1,050 horsepower with not very much fuel, as you can see. And the one he was wearing is the sort of scaled-down version of 800 horsepower. It's, as I say, really just the beginning of this journey. So the big frontier for this year, apart from carrying on enjoying going around the world, flying in interesting locations, and also training and helping other people to experience this very unique form of flight. The big new frontier is actually the transition to aerofoil flight. So at the moment, if you know the Harrier aircraft, it just blows air downwards. In fact, I don't really think they're operational anywhere in the world now, but they used to just blow air downwards. I suppose like the F-35. That's a very inefficient way of actually getting off the ground. If you start transitioning forward into actual aerodynamic flight, then it's a vastly more efficient way to generate lift. We've got about 130% of the weight of the flight system, which is me and the kit, in thrust. So as you saw when we were flying over that lake, it didn't take much just to lean a tiny bit and you get up to an amazing speed. So we're working in the background to develop essentially wings. They don't need to be very big to have a big impact and start generating lift in that way. And we're also entertaining all sorts of really exotic and quite exciting technologies. So I think the next slide, if I remember rightly in my slides, oh, you've killed us, there we go. That's another set of these arm mounts. So in other words, you put your arm down that tube and then those are the engine housings. That's 3D printed in titanium. The ones that I flew across the lake were aluminium. We're kind of pushing into all sorts of different realms that are really quite new in terms of materials, and it's just brilliant to collaborate with companies that most of the time, actually, and that's included, those 3D mounts are included, really want to just collaborate with us because we're having great fun doing something that was thought impossible. The other big technology frontier, in addition to the wings and the 3D printing, is heads-up display technology, so AR, basically. This is a really good use case for AR. When you're flying along, you can't exactly look down at any dials. So having a holographic projection in front of you of your fuel and engine data is just fantastic. We've even got now comms, so communications with the ground. We've had several of us flying now at the same time and being able to actually call, as in speak to each other. And slightly weirdly, we're actually using voice conferencing. So you dial into a conference number and then all speak through this shared headset system. So it's, as I say, really only the beginning of this journey. We've got some pretty awesome plans coming up this year. This is a kind of fun little artist render of some of the ideas. We've actually got an early stage deal signed with a Hollywood-based outfit that want to, and you have to have a bit of a leap of imagination for this, actually have crews, I suppose an air race and display team actually flying around pylons, flying around a circuit. And if you imagine you're in pairs, one pilot goes off, flies around this circuit, like the Red Bull air races, probably over water, because then if you crash, it's not quite so catastrophic. And you do, I don't know, 3-minute laps, and we can fly, just to be clear, even hovering now for about 8 to 10 minutes, which is, pretty impressive. But let's say 3-minute laps, come back in, tag your next partner, and they go off round. And if we had a whole air race and display team doing that, 1,000 horsepower jet suits, which literally hit you in the chest when they're running, I think that'd be quite exciting. So this is all the stuff that's coming next year, and all of it, really, from that starting point, which was, I suppose, a willingness to have a pretty, frankly at the time, ridiculous vision, something that was considered by most aeronautical engineers, and my whole family background was aeronautical engineering, not that I followed it up until now. It was considered to be pretty impossible. And it just shows that if you've got an appetite to go and entertain, I suppose, relentless failure, which is where you make most of the learnings, and as long as that failure is safe, it just shows where you can get to. And as I say, I think if you keep following where we're going in the next 12 months, I think you might be quite surprised with what we managed to deliver. Now, I rattled through this fairly quickly because I usually at these kind of events, if we've got the technology to do it, open this out to people if they want to ask any questions. And I know we started a bit late as well. So either catch me at the end of this, or otherwise, if there's any questions, then I'm very happy to field any in the audience. So anyway, thank you.
I guess I'm Stefan Salom from Infostud Serbia and Digital Serbia. I guess I'm asking what many asked you and thinking at the moment. Any estimates of the price and ability to buy?
So the one that you saw there dressed in that hangar, that was $250,000, but that included 3 days of flight training and taking it away. Now actually, the guy didn't take it away. He's coming back in a couple of months' time to carry on training with the next generation of suit. So we're actually now in California and in London setting up these, essentially it's a fitted out aircraft hangar with everything you need in order to safely feel and experience what it's like to fly around. And I think we're going to mostly cater for people who want to come along and spend a day, 2 days experiencing it and learning to fly, which will be a lot cheaper, not $250,000, 50 to 100,000, that kind of range.
What? You need a license to do it?
No, this is the joy of doing something completely new that's not been done before. No, so as I say, 13 different countries. Everything packs down into 2 normal suitcases. I used to use these big armored Peli cases that look like you're traveling around with weapons, and they used to get a bit too much attention at airports. We still got let in everywhere, but now they're just 2 hard shell wheeled suitcases. They weigh about 23 kilos each, and we travel anywhere in the world.
So if we want to do it, what do we have to do? Come to you, and where is it?
You want to fly, or you want to?
Yes, I want to fly.
Yeah, London or California are the 2 locations.
California.
Yeah,
Okay.
just come along.
Okay.
So the Japanese chap who you saw in that clip, he was one of the founding or early members of Ferrari Cliente, I think he'd done 3,000 kilometers of F1 driving, and he's on cameras saying that was his 3 days with us was vastly more exciting and exhilarating than driving a Formula One car. There is something pretty indescribable of hearing the wind-up of 5 gas turbines, 1,000 horsepower, and then if you've ever been around a drag car, a jet fighter, Formula One, where it hits you in your chest, it hits you in your soul. It's like that. And then you're seeing a human being rise up and move around in 3 dimensions. It's pretty unusual. So yeah, either come and watch us anywhere in the world, or as I say, London or California. But we're probably going to start building more of these setups.
We'll do that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Richard. This has
problem
been
at all.
big fun.
Thank you.
Give a big applause.